Up.
There we are. Very humbled with this introduction sort of just made. So what I'm going to talk about, we talked about cybersecurity, we talked about regulation. I'm going to take you back to sort of, what we are, what Tide is about, which is essentially solving small business owners' problems, right? And I'm going to talk a little bit about how we see this problem to solve emerge and what Tide is doing about it. So what's very important when people talk about SMEs is actually that we all have a different view of what an SME is. If you actually look into the market, there are 5.9 million SMEs in the UK. The very vast majority are extremely small. So 5.7 of them, by whatever definition you use, number of staff, if you do turnover, these are by far the largest component. Now what's very important from a Tide point of view is that these businesses essentially do not have a formalized finance function. So every time you spend time on banking and admin, it's an opportunity cost to the business, because unlike in a mid-sized business where I have a finance function and I can say, your clunky accounting, your clunky, interrelationship with your bank doesn't matter because that's what we pay the finance function for. For the small business owner, it's either the person themselves or they may have a trusted admin person that does other vital things in the company like staffing, purchasing, etc. So for these people, effectively, the time spent on finance and admin is, real opportunity cost, and at 48 days a year, quite substantial. Now, if you look into the market, what has already emerged is actually quite a rich set of tools. So if you go back 15, 20 years ago, where there were actually few technologically advanced solutions available for small businesses, now there's actually a really rich set of offering around. And in many ways, they've made impact, but one of the things that it hasn't solved is time saving. And the reason for that is that actually running with these different tools, especially getting them to work with one another, is quite time consuming. And so really what Tide has set out is to solve what we call internally the connectivity problem, which is really around these tools, how to optimally run the data flow. And I'll show you an example on invoicing on that at the moment. And so Tide has sort of set out and said, we are really there to save you, small business owner, time, so you can go back to what you love, which really from a business owner's perspective, and I know there are some of you in the room that are probably business owners, is really two things. One is really focus on your business yourself and have a little bit of spare time. And the way we save time is through what we call connectivity chains. So think of, and there are many, many around, you can imagine, across all these banking and admin tools. Here I'll give you the example of invoicing, how we look at it. So if you look at it from a traditional point of view, involved in this whole connectivity chains are very different tools, those for expense management, those for accounts receivable, those accounting and tax tools, and credit. The way Tide looks to solve this is best explained by taking the example of this small business owner, in this case an architect. So the architect goes out and basically buys building supplies. These building supplies for a project they're running. These business supplies are paid by the Tide card. Through the Tide card, essentially, with the app, you can essentially scan in all the information from the receipt, and it basically automatically allocates this scanned in information with the expenditure made through the card. Then, when the architect decides to actually bill her customers, the invoicing tool allows effectively that information to be retrieved, her margin to be added, and effectively the invoice to be raised. If she wants, this particular invoice can be chased and factored. And of course, when the money comes in, it can be booked into the accounting system. And we try to make sure that all this connectivity happens automatically with minimal intervention. That's really what Tide is about and what we're trying to solve. Now, if you look at Tide and the market in which we operate, we effectively traditionally operate in something, what you could call business banking or business current account market. And in business current accounts, effectively, the market has been extremely concentrated. So 90% of the entire market is taken up by the big 5 banks. You had 4 traditional challenger banks, Clydesdale Yorkshire, now Virgin Money, TSB, Metro, and Co-op. And then you have 2 digital challengers that are really in the business current account market of scale, Tide and Starling. If you looked at when this whole game started, before the government started to intervene, effectively Tide was the number 1 digital player. We then had an event where the government said, look, really business banking is too important, to be part of this oligopoly. It needs to be broken up, and the RBS alternative remedy scheme was sort of conceived to break this open. And Tide, as part of a structure with Clearbank, our partner bank, won one of the awards. And as part of that, effectively every player had to communicate what targets they were looking to hit. And so you will see with these funds and these propositions that players like Tide propose, we will actually break open the business banking market. So overall, we are quite confident that Tide, with this connectivity solution, time-saving proposition, will become the number 1 overall challenger. And if you look at more short-term rather than in the future, this adoption around solving connectivity, saving people, business owners time and money, is very rapidly leading to traction. So in January, we had 1% market share. We're actually just today passing 2% market share with 120,000 SMEs. That's 2% of every SME. Now in the UK, what's very important is small business owners typically don't have multiple bank relationships. So unlike consumers, where it's very easy to open your 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th challenger bank account, for business banking, because businesses effectively don't want to spread their liquidity, number 1, and number 2, every time you have a business account, you have an admin overhead. You have to tell your suppliers about the bank account details. You need to account for it, etc. Most businesses, I think the last statistical number was over 90% only have a single banking relationship. And so, 2%, so 1 in 50 SMEs already bank with Tide. If you look at the flow, business current accounts, Tide currently opens around 12% of all new business current accounts in the UK. So we have quite a bit of traction on this proposition. And that's it. And probably, Laurent, I'm a bit, given that everyone else was very slow and used their time to the maximum, we were so scared of putting too many slides in that we left time for questions at the end.
Thank you very much. Oliver Prill, give him a round of applause. Thank you very much.